Recorded Books presents The Absolutely Indispensable Man, Ralph Bunche, the United Nations, and the Fight to End Empire, by Kal Raustiala. Narrated by Leon Nixon, with Jonathan Todd Ross.
Forward. In 2006, I entered my new office in Bunche Hall for the first time. I had been a professor at UCLA for 6 years and had often been inside the tall North Campus tower. On its 11 floors are an array of social science departments and classrooms, and at the very top is housed the center that I now direct, the Ronald W. Burkle Center for International Relations. Over the coming years, I would spend many days in Bunche Hall. As I settled into my new office, I realized I did not really know much about Ralph Bunche. I knew he had been an accomplished leader at the United Nations, an institution I had studied for years. I knew he had won a Nobel Peace Prize. And I knew he was one of the very few black men prominent in mid-century diplomacy. But beyond that, I knew almost nothing about how he had stitched together such a strikingly unusual and illustrious career. Curious, I began to explore Bunche's life, reading the now almost 3-decade-old biography written by his deputy and friend, the late Brian Urquhart, and subsequent works by excellent scholars such as Charles Henry, Ben Keppel, Pearl Robinson, and Ed Keller. Among other things, I discovered that Bunche spent much of his adult life in Kew Gardens, Queens, about a mile from where I had lived as a young child, and my grandparents had lived out their lives after immigrating to the United States. Indeed, Bunche and I lived in Kew Gardens at the same time, though he was by then an elder statesman and I was a toddler. During this period, I was teaching a course on the UN for UCLA students. Each July for a month, I would take 25 students to New York City. We would tour the UN, meet with officials and ambassadors, and visit some of the non-governmental organizations that work closely with, and sometimes sharply criticize, the UN. As I walked by the long line of fluttering national flags on First Avenue, I would sometimes think of the early decades of the organization and the role Bunche had played. When he began at the time of the UN's founding, there were about 50 member states. Today, there are nearly 200. That huge growth in flags was, in turn, a huge story, a transformation of the international system, and an often peaceful revolution in human self-determination, in which dozens of former colonies gained their independence. Over time, I began to think of writing my own book about the UN, one that would focus on the momentous change of post-war decolonization and how it transformed world politics. And I would tell that story of transformation through the life and work of Ralph Bunche. I learned that UCLA possessed an enormous trove of his papers, some 200 linear feet of boxes, and that sealed the deal. I dove in and soon became immersed in Bunche's remarkable life. As I did so, the focus of the book evolved, becoming less a history of the UN and decolonization, and more a biography of one of the organization's greatest and most influential figures. Still, I have not written a conventional biography, and I do not try to tell the full story of Ralph Bunche's life. Rather, this is a political or professional biography that engages primarily with his career in diplomacy, especially during his UN years. Other authors, better placed to explore the personal or other sides of him, I hope, will write different books. I have focused on my expertise, Bunche the diplomat and policymaker. And so I spend only enough time on his childhood and family life to give context and texture to his impact on the post-war world. As the focus of the book fell into place, I struggled with what aspects of his story I could tell. As an international lawyer with a Ph.D. in international relations, I felt very comfortable with Bunche's career at the State Department and at the UN. This was terrain I had studied for decades. Yet Ralph Bunche was more than a diplomat. He was a black man with a lifelong commitment to racial justice.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?